I really have come across a variety of things that I feel like I need to share with people out there, and maybe it might help somebody. Right now, we are going into an interesting year, and it's going to be a great year. But there are certain things where government in our generation is extremely pushing against and pushing the line up against personal constitutional rights, personal liberty, and the right to have property and enjoy your property. And I went today to a wonderful Daughters of the American Revolution event, and a woman, probably in her 70s, was amazing and did about 40 minutes of reciting and acting out the part of Liza Pinckney. For about 40 minutes, she did the whole history as though she were Liza Pinckney telling us about her life. And it was pretty amazing, and it really brought to my forefront consciousness how difficult life was back then, and how really what we perceive as difficult right now certainly isn't exactly the way that was. We have our problems in this day and age, and we face a lot of challenges. But what our founding fathers did, and as we're celebrating, this is the 250th cockade, the South Carolina one, which I got from some of my friends in Greenville that make these. This year, it's really important to go back and see a little, just understand what they went through to get us here. And then understand that it's absolutely incumbent on our generation to make a stand at times too. It's great to get along. It's wonderful to have peace, but it's also wonderful to have freedom. And freedom often means that you have to do hard things. So recently, I have been undergoing in my own gated community what's called a cull, a deer cull, and it's outside of the hunting season, and I understand the possible need for it under certain circumstances, but it's an outdated sort of guideline under a particular state agency that then they contract out to each individual property owners association, and then they in turn contract out to a private business. What could possibly go wrong? There's so many different elements where things can fall apart. There's not communication, there's no supervision. And in our gated community, the permit went on for over 30 days. It's still going on. We still every night wonder, where the gunshots are going to come from, and how many deer are going to be killed. And 141 is just a lot. The only way that they were supposed to call these deer under the guidelines is if they were really sick, or if they were causing car accidents, which SCDOT said that they were not causing car accidents, and they're not sick, and they were not eating any indigenous foliage, and taking it out to the ground. So when I stepped back and saw the bigger picture, I understood that this was more of a depopulation of the deer move for a massive amount of development that's planned this year. And that's going to go on in probably all 46 of the South Carolina counties, but particularly in Bluffton. It's, I thought it had outgrown itself a year ago, but come to find out, they're still developing, knocking trees down, and to the loss, the great loss of what the Low Country really is. And so there's a balance. And my real issue came when a few people knew something was wrong before I did. They were looking at the studies, they were looking at the facts, and the board still has ignored the homeowners in our particular plantation. Apparently they've been advised by the attorney to not respond to any of the people who had questions or disputed that a cull was necessary in our plantation. It's a $21,500 purchase, and I think it ends up that they're suggesting that it's an ongoing expense, and then this person could potentially come in and do other contract work. Here's the problem. There is quiet enjoyment of property, and the homeowners, most of them were not listened to. They did a vote on it, but they flipped it around so fast that it was almost impossible for every homeowner to actually get a ballot. This is where we find that HOAs, despite the fact that they're nonprofit associations, are taking on the role of governance and where they're supposed to work for the homeowner, when they start working against the homeowner or using the homeowner's money against them, that's where you need to try to take a stand. And another time is when you've got our town, and our town of Bluffton just bought the 200, maybe 40 plus acres that abuts my gated community. It used to be a hunting ground, and that of course normally took care of whatever excessive deer we may or may not have had. That now is belonging to the town, and they bought it with their own money, so they didn't have any additional green space state requirements. And apparently there's a plan to put some roads and some more infrastructure back there. And then we become what's called a little donut hole, which our area is unincorporated. But what happens is when the town starts buying all the land around an unincorporated area, it ends up trying to absorb it. And right now we technically would have to ask for that to happen. I believe that there's a trend in local town municipality law where they're trying to get it so that they could change some sort of ordinance where they could just, we would not have to ask, they would not need our consent. They could just absorb us into the town of Bluffton and make us then taxpayers. And they say that it's going to be good for us, so they try to bring people in with the little goodies in the goodie room, and they say you're going to have better trash receptacles, or you're going to have better trash delivery and come pick up and delivery. That's okay. We can do that on our own, and we've been doing that on our own. Fine. That's not a reason to become part of a town corporation. Another thing is the county. So it goes from the HOAs to the town government to the county government, obviously to the state, and then back down. And all 46 counties are participating in what's kind of called, it's got a little bit of the Agenda 2030 to it. It's more of like, how do we create little habitats for people? And that's really what I'm trying to convey today. Is this was one of the first months in my whole entire life that I have felt that we are being slowly conditioned to not think like our forebears or our ancestors who, stood up at the Revolutionary War days and stood for freedom. And so one of my favorite things that got spoke about today was Thomas Paine. And he was apparently sort of they call him, he wasn't main character vibes. He was more, secondary character vibes. But the 42-page book that he wrote, Common Sense, that became he was controversial during his lifetime, but obviously he was not as controversial, and people understood what he was trying to say after. And the book Common Sense still is around today. I believe it's something that we all need to read again, and I'm going to get a copy of it and maybe some extra copies to pass out to some of the leadership that I have here in my local government. But until independence is declared, the continent will feel itself like a man who continues putting off some unpleasant business from day to day, yet knows it must be done, hates to set about it, wishes it was over, and is continually haunted with the thoughts of its necessity. That's sort of like when you start feeling like you need to be doing something and you're just turning a blind eye to either injustice or watching you get ripped off. Your money is going to places where you normally would not want to have it go. Originally tax money was just supposed to go for roads and infrastructure, not pay for all the things that it pays for now, the agendas. And so another Thomas Paine quote on Common Sense is, "Common sense will tell us that the power which hath endeavored to subdue us is of all others the most improper to defend us." Meaning, we really, it's a natural adversarial role between the people and the government. And certainly when the government gets in bed with various nonprofits, or let's just say, a lot of nonprofits, and the government sort of delegates out business to the nonprofits. That is what he was meaning there. Here is another one. "Ye that oppose independence now, ye know not what ye do. Ye are opening a door to eternal tyranny by keeping vacant the seat of government." which means, more people should run. And it's not that we necessarily have vacant seats, but we have seats that are maybe filled with people who are all on the same page. Again, you don't see, our board was unanimous in the vote that it did and did not listen to any civil debate on it. They basically shut us down and would give us, 3 minutes to talk and then buzz us off the stage. They didn't allow us to give rebuttal evidence. Um, that's not healthy when you have a board that's kind of doing that. So I'm going to go a little bit more. I don't want to go too long now, but here's another one. Securing freedom and property to all men, and above all things, the free exercise of religion according to the dictates of conscience. And through this issue, the more I saw, more and more people were just afraid to even say anything. They were harassed and then they were subdued. And that's not South Carolina. That's not America. So I just say Godspeed. While we breathe, we hope, and that I hope that this year will be great and that people will have the courage to stand where they need to stand. Not to pick battles that aren't yours or not to pick battles for the sake of picking battles. But when you are called to make a stand, do it, because it's easier to do it now than it is later. Thanks, and God bless.